Good morning. Welcome back to the Mayor's Table. I'm Mayor Tommy Roberts. My guest again this morning is City Manager Rob Mays. Rob, welcome back.
Good to be here.
Rob, this morning I want to talk about the recent City Council decision to close Brookside Pool for this summer. And the council made that decision here in the last couple of weeks after a month or so of giving it some serious consideration and doing some additional research and gathering some additional data upon which to make that decision. Brookside Pool is an iconic institution, facility in the city of Farmington. Dates back to 1958, so it's been operating for 57 years. And as one would think, there's wear and tear on a facility of that age, and particularly a swimming pool. Let's set the background a little bit and talk about some of the problems that we were experiencing in the continuing operation of Brookside Pool.
Yeah. So you mentioned, wear and tear. That's obvious, and generally that kind of falls into the category of maintenance, things that can be repaired and kept up along the way. This really goes way beyond that. Probably the lifespan of that pool was probably supposed to be 30 to 40 years. This community got 60 years out of it through great maintenance, great repair, but just bit by bit, the very infrastructure itself has just deteriorated down to it's failed. It's not a matter of external cosmetics. It's a matter of literally the very core and foundation of it, the piping, the concrete designs, the drains, things that can't be replaced have begun to fail. But the real issue that finally closed Brookside Pool really boils down to our inability to operate it safely and within the required health standards of the New Mexico Environment Department. For about as long as I can remember in my tenure here, going back to Jeff Bowman's days as our Parks and Rec Director, year after year, we've dealt with this issue of whether we would even get a permit to open it on an annual basis from the state, because we have not been meeting the filtration requirements for exchanging the water. We've been operating under a grandfather clause for a number of years, and then the last couple of years we haven't even been able to meet the standard of the grandfather clause. So as some of our folks will remember last year, we tried desperate measures of only opening it every other day with hopes that the water could exchange on the off day and we could keep ahead of it. But it just became apparent last year, even with those kind of extreme measures, that we couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah. So I think from my perspective as an elected official, staff has done a very good job in trying to keep that pool open for the benefit of citizens who are interested in using it. And there is a demand for an open water facility in a pool setting. But let's talk a little bit about the cost to place the pool back into compliance with state guidelines.
So while there would still even be no absolute guarantees that we could have even still met it, our estimates, we had a professional third-party pool engineering firm come in and really assess the pool. They ran cameras and did things they could even try to get and see the things that you can't see. And we estimate at least $1 million would be the cost to give it a chance of the major renovations needed to have extended its life in any real way. And that just becomes not a good cost-benefit analysis. We'd still have a 60-year-old pool, spend $1 million of it, when in reality probably replacing the pool brand new as is in a large flat pool is probably somewhere between $1.5 to $2 million. So the idea of spending $1 million to try to eke out a few more years of a 60-year-old facility. There were other problems that developed, Mayor. You'll recall, like last year, we documented we lost over $1.1 million gallons of water that was leaked into the grounds somewhere. So we just know that the system was just completely failing. So clearly, it didn't seem smart to invest $1 million where there'd still be question marks when that's nearly the cost of replacement.
Based upon all of that information, the council made a reasonable decision, in my opinion, to go ahead and close the pool. But when we lose an opportunity of that kind, another opportunity presents itself generally, and that's the case in this situation. Two principal moves, I think, have been made, and I want to talk about each one of those. The first of them is to address the closure of Brookside Pool and the lost opportunity in a more temporary way, And that involves opening Lake Farmington to recreational use this summer. Describe that program.
Yeah. So kind of a short-term solution and a long-term. It's possible that that short-term solution won't be temporary. It might be permanent swimming, but the council did authorize a change in our ordinance to allow for swimming opportunities this very summer to try to replace we're not going to have this summer at Brookside Pool. That'll be offered free of charge. We'll be roping off an area and developing a nice little swimming beach out there to give some outdoor recreation opportunities. And the kind of exciting thing about that is it's also an incremental step in the right direction towards the kind of the big vision of Farmington Lake that we've talked about on this program before. And that's a good step in that direction. It'll actually be able to be accomplished from a cost standpoint. We'll spend less developing and operating a swimming opportunity this summer at the lake than we actually spent operating Brookside Pool. So it's a cost neutral on the short run.
And then the longer range opportunity is a bit more grand in scale, and it's exciting as we think about it. But the council has just recently given staff direction to pursue in greater detail this grander option, and that is a water park facility, something that most people in Farmington would have seen in other larger communities. But the City Council has been presented information about these kinds of facilities in communities the size of Farmington and even smaller.
Yep.
And one of the things that was impressed upon me is the fact that these kinds of facilities can be operated in the black. Granted, the capital costs of building them likely will never be recovered.
Correct.
But you look at these things in the context of economic development, particularly tourism, bringing people from the outside into our communities, spend their dollars. And these kinds of facilities have helped to improve economies in places that have built them. Talk more specifically about what can be done and what the vision is.
Well, earlier you really hit the nail with a hammer when you pointed out that outdoor swimming's an institution. It's been going on here for you were a child swimming at Brookside Pool, to put that in perspective. And so we feel like we've got to have something. It would be a real missing piece of I think, an established need in our community. The question is, what would we build? Do we replace it with just a flat pool like we've had? When all the emerging national trends in aquatics really are starting to point to people really aren't that interested in the flat pools anymore. They're more interested in these water parks with lazy rivers and slides and rock coming walls, and basically a playground in the water, lazy river for the teenagers, float out areas for adults. And these have been extremely successful in communities. As you pointed out, we've looked at in our case studies and our initial analysis, for example, one community with only 10,000 population has over 60,000 people using that pool. By contrast, Brookside Pool is down to running between 13,000 and 15,000 people a year. So even in our own community, we've seen that national trend. There's been less and less interest in Brookside Pool over the years. Clearly time for something new. So certainly my opinion, is obviously economics are always a factor here and cost, but it wouldn't make much sense to just replace exactly what we have when we've seen the interest in that waning over the years. Why not go big with something that as you said, would fill two needs for us? Not only would it be a great quality of life project for our citizens, but something that would be an attraction as an economic development point would be great to continue to bring people in and maintain our position as a regional commercial hub. Give people a reason to come in on a Friday and stay in a hotel and eat in our restaurants and go to the pool on Saturday and make a weekend out of it.
Before we close this segment, let's talk about the process that staff has been directed by council to pursue.
Well, the idea of this as an economic development advantage is such a real issue that the CVB has agreed to put up the money to sponsor what we would call a community-based feasibility study. So what we will be launching with hand in hand with the CVB will be a process of bringing in a consultant, show us options, show us pricing, show us business models, study our market, and to really do a very, very extensive analysis of the feasibility of building a pool. It would also include a major emphasis on community input. into what the features would be and what kind of a pool would we build, and then ultimately to help citizens and obviously the elected body ultimately make a decision on what kind of a priority this would be for our future.
I think we want to mention before we close that the CVB is an independent organization, independent of the city of Farmington. It generates its revenues through lodgers tax. So that's the source of the fund for the feasibility study. And then I think our viewers would be asking the question about what's the source of funding for the capital improvements, the cost of building such a facility. And we've looked at options there, but it appears that the most feasible would be to refinance outstanding debt, extend that debt for a longer period of time, but generate a lower interest rate so that our debt service remains the same as it has been during the life of the bonds to date.
That's right.
And that's a very reasonable, viable way to finance projects of this kind without raising taxes.
That's right.
So that's the funding mechanism. Well, Rob, thank you for being with us to discuss this project. I think this is one that a lot of people in Farmington will be very interested in watching as it develops. We hope that you've gotten some information this morning that's helpful to you who are viewing this segment of the Mayor's Table. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next Monday.